Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey, happy Thursday. How are you?
It's just like, what day is it? Happy Thursday.
I had to think about it for a minute. I'm like, what day of the week is this? Because I've been off and I haven't done a show since a week ago. So,
Well,
yeah.
tonight is funny because I've got my earphones in, and our opening song, the bass hit a little bit different. I was like, wait, it's like, whoo, that's loud. So it woke me right up.
If you were tired before, you're not now.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't know what day it was either. I'm losing my days, but that always happens around the holidays,
Yeah, I hear you. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, it was quiet. I had a very quiet Christmas.
Mine
So
too.
it was good. That I'd rather have a quiet Christmas than something chaotic.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you too. It was honestly, I chilled, watched Christmas movies, some better than others, some I'd never heard of, and yeah, so it was good though.
I think I'm binge watching Fire Country. I don't know if anybody's watched that. I'm addicted. I don't know what happened.
What is it?
It's just about a guy who is convicted of some crimes, and he ends up going to fire camp to become a firefighter, and it helps reduce his sentence from the prison and blah blah blah. I just got addicted. I got addicted.
Easy to do.
So, if you haven't watched it and you need something to watch, well, okay, there you go. A lot of action.
Absolutely. So we do have a conference coming up, and Brandy, do you want to talk about that one?
Absolutely. We have a conference coming up the 19th and 20th of September of 2025 in Richmond, Missouri at the Eagleton Civic Center. We have our tickets out there. You can get them on Blondes and Booze under Eventbrite. So just go there and you should be able to see everything there. Mr. Gary Spikes has put out the link for us. Thank you, Gary. And we have some fantastic speakers, as you can tell by our posters. Look at there. There's so many people. We're going to have a fun-filled weekend with a meet and greet Friday night. We have our conference all day Saturday. We also have a ghost hunt Saturday night, which all of our speakers have agreed to come, which is the first time I ever heard of that happening.
Yep.
And how many tickets we got left for Saturday night?
2. We have two ghost hunt
tickets. Yeah, 2 ghost hunt tickets, and we're not going to be opening up any more for anybody. So if you haven't got them, you better get them now. And we have plenty of tickets for the meet and greet and the conference on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So we try to make it very affordable for everybody to come. It's just going to be a great time. I don't even know what to say about it. There's so many fun people that are going to be there.
Yeah. It's just going to be a good time. So seriously, like if you're in the area and can make it, like I said, we've priced it affordable for everybody. That was our goal. Yeah. We didn't want anybody to have to spend a whole lot of money to come, because we understand travel and that kind of thing. So, we tried to price it accordingly. And
I know, even with the ghost hunt, I $75 is cheap. Because I was looking at some of these ghost hunt with the celebrity guests and everything. They're wanting like $125, $150, and we did it for 75. So if you want those tickets, there's 2 left. But also, like the other tickets are still available, very affordable.
Yep. And Morgan asked, how far is the airport? Kansas City Airport is right about, as a crow flies not that far, but about an hour by the time you go through the traffic in Kansas City and the good stuff. So about an hour from the museum. So yeah, it's going to be a good conference. Looking forward to it. And, people that are coming to it, a lot of those, most of those people, well, actually all of them are our friends. And so we thought, you know what, let's just start it this year and ask our friends to come and they've agreed. So awesome.
Exactly. And they're all lots of fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a dull one in the bunch.
Nope. True story. So anyway, we have a great show lined up for you guys for tonight too. We have Chris Garetano, who he's been on the show before. He was great. And I'm going to go ahead and bring him up. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm still in the mood because I saw Nosferatu yesterday, I think it was. Yeah, a really creepy movie, and it's the third one. The original was made in the 1920s, and it was a German ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it still is.
Oh wow!
But it has its own vibe, whereas Dracula has some. Or at least Bram Stoker's Dracula, you could have sympathy for the Dracula character, and this you do not.
Mm-hmm.
It's
wow.
the epitome of pure evil on Christmas.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Is it worth going to see?
Oh yeah, but I think it's a masterpiece in its own right, but the Dracula that was made with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder and Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves is, my opinion, a better movie, much better movie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but it's still great. So it's hard to say because like Nosferatu is, if you want something darker and hopeless and evil, then go see that.
Just in time for Christmas. Okay.
Merry Christmas. Why don't you tell everybody about what you told us backstage? You told everybody Merry Christmas.
Right. So, the ending was so perverse, bleak, gory, dark. And I guess, somebody saved the day in a tragic way. However, the theater, you could hear a pin drop. And I just said Merry Christmas and everyone started laughing. So
yeah, got him out of that mode there.
Yeah, it's similar to when I saw that. Did you see that movie Hereditary by any chance? Another
No, I didn't.
pitch black horror movie. And at the end of that, I said, your therapist is waiting at the door for you right now. It's to break the ice to say something like that after a theatrical experience. Sometimes I wonder why these movies are so popular. I definitely question it, even though I surround myself with this stuff. I think I have a healthy perspective on it, so it doesn't really affect me in a negative way.
Yeah, absolutely. So was there a lot of people there seeing that movie on Christmas, or?
Believe it or not, yeah.
Really?
They were interviewing Willem Dafoe on, I guess, the red carpet for the premiere a week or two ago. And they said, oh, so it's a Christmas movie. It's coming up. He was laughing. He's had a smirk on his face. He said, well, there's a Christmas tree in it. And, oh, yeah, sure. Take the whole family to go see it. It's
family movie.
No, it's not. It's beautifully made. The aesthetics and the photography. I think it's a great update. It's my favorite of the 3 Nosferatu movies. One was made in the 70s with Klaus Kinski. The original Murnau's film was a ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula. In fact, I think Stoker's widow sued Murnau's film company and won.
Really?
It's just pure plagiarism,
Right.
I had no idea.
They didn't have permission to adapt it, but it over time it's become its own thing. It's 100-plus-year-old movie. So
yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, let's talk about you. You have your own A Haunting We Will Go. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So, okay, so the origins of this, I made a show called Strange World with Discovery and Travel. And as much as I was able to do with that, I still feel like it's a wrestling match when you're making a show with a network because there's so many other personalities that chime in. And I love collaborating with people, but I think there should be a reason, not just because. And it was very frustrating. And I feel like Strange World was maybe 65% of my vision. So I wanted to make a new series, and I had to elect to do that on my own completely with my own money and my own time. And so I started making that a couple of years ago. There's several in production. One of them is called A Haunting We Will Go, and I decided to make standalone feature length. I make docu art. I don't exactly make documentaries. There's a lot of cinema in it also, but the documentary scenes are the most honest that I could portray because I don't script myself outside of my narration, and I never script my guests or the people I'm interviewing or the locations I go to. It's planned to where I want to go and what I want to explore, but everything that happens there, and the rest is constructed in post. And it's a long process. It's something that you cannot make in a short period of time. A good movie takes time. And it's something that also I allow to expand. At some point, I have to put my foot down and say, this is done, and I have to finish it. But this is something I could have finished last year. However, there were several stories. So A Haunting We Will Go is in chapters. And I wanted to make the antithesis of what we keep seeing over and over again, or at least what we saw the last 20 years with these ghost shows on TV. And it's not to knock them. It's just a repetitive format. And I feel like there's so much more to talk about and see. And I grew up with, I think, the greatest of them. They either came in book form or they were in shows like In Search Of and Unsolved Mysteries and stuff like that. And I loved the atmosphere, and I loved how they were portrayed. And I also loved how they never tried to assert they knew what was happening, because we still don't, we don't really know what this is. And all right, so I asked myself a question. Okay, so if I'm going to tackle this subject that a million people have already, what could I do to make the best experience for you and for me? And I wanted to, there are traditional stories in it, and there are hauntings, and there are locations that I go to, and there are people that have had experiences. However, I feel like the way I'm portraying it is, whereas I think where maybe it's glossed over or over dramatized, I try to discuss what could be happening in several different ways. And so there's a variety. There is my experiences from when I was a kid, which I heard a ghost at 14 years old, and this is portrayed in the story. That there are family ghost stories that were told. A cousin of mine was tragically killed in a car accident, and this is all in the film. And my mother had an experience. My cousin was killed, and she inherited one of her blouses. And there was a winter day. She was trying it on, and there was a cold breeze in the room, and then the door slammed shut, and she felt a presence. And so I grew up with that story, and I hadn't experienced anything myself outside of motion pictures. I loved ghost stories as a kid. I loved all of these things. And there was my mother telling this story to us, and she was serious, because her delivery wasn't just trying to scare us. We were a family immersed in movies because my parents owned a video store. So I had access constantly, obviously long before the internet. I had access to movies that most people really didn't. You'd have to rent a million movies a day. I'm exaggerating, but so it starts off semi-autobiographical, and then it leads into chapters where I explore Disney a little bit, because I think classic Disney has an air of traditional ghost stories throughout. Everything from Fantasia to Ichabod Crane. Disney had his own ghost experiences, and was ultimately epitomized in the Haunted Mansion that he created. He was obsessed with that stuff. And so I explore that a little bit. I talked to a Disney Imagineer and also somebody named Fox Nolte, who wrote a book called Boundless Realm about the creation of the Haunted Mansion and his obsession with it. And then I shift over to, okay, so we've seen fiction, we've looked at family ghost stories, and now we enter a real haunted mansion. And I spent probably a total of maybe 16 shooting days collectively at the May Stringer House, a true haunted mansion in Brooksville, Florida, and interviewed everybody that I could involved with it, explored the house. I was so busy shooting there and interviewing people that I never really had an experience there. And as much as I opened myself to it, I heard about everyone else's. So you hear about that, and we explore the idea of, a lot of these ghost shows never consider the fact that at some point we're going to be there. They seem to dismiss that. It's more like sport. They're running in and trying to get a reading, and trust me, that stuff's in this too. But I think it's more contemplative that, I wonder about my own death. I wonder about where I'm going next. I think about it a lot. I try because I'm coping with it and not being scared of it. So it goes through ideas and perspectives that I think are absent from a lot of these shows. And I'm always digging deep for that. I'm, philosophically trying to go deeper into it. So I get into literature, I get into even science, quantum sciences like Paul Dirac. Did you ever see the movie Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter?
Long time ago, yeah.
So he was reading a lot of Paul Dirac's stuff, and he's a theoretical physicist who believed, and you hear this in the actual dialogue in the film, that every particle has an antiparticle. He was referring to good and evil, and I think the only way we're actually going to register and understand what's happening to us, or what might happen after physical death, or what's happening during a haunting, is through science. I don't think science dismisses the supernatural. It's just a way to analyze it. So a lot of these ghost hunters that are using these devices, and these devices go way back. I mean, we can go to Harry Price, early 20th century stuff. Ghost hunting isn't anything new, and people were exploring this stuff ages ago. So it goes through the history of all of that. It really is an epic that I've been trying to wrangle into the best possible structure without it ever making it feel rushed or glossed over. And some people have asked me, well, why don't you just make a Haunting We Will Go a series? It's like, no, I really want it to be one singular work. And, the next chapter is about a completely different subject, and so is the third one and the fourth one. And I just wanted to say everything I had to say in one movie, and it's nearly 2 hours, but I think it's something that people will revisit. And it also discusses Halloween, and it also discusses the witching hour, and there are several other locations too. There's a haunted house in Tampa, Florida, that is very active, where we actually did experience things there, and a lot of people have, and almost to the point where I think it's a detriment for some people. And then I discussed grief and loss, and there's a woman who, and this is one of the reasons why I had to extend my shooting days. There's a woman whose daughter died, coincidentally, similarly to my cousin Cindy, in a car accident when she was 16. And this was by chance. I was with Dave Spinks, and I wanted to interview him about desecration of sacred ground and how that could have an effect, and the importance of burial grounds, even modern commercial cemeteries. And just by coincidence, David said he heard something, he heard a girl singing. And I was all set up to shoot in one area because I liked the way it looked in the cemetery. And he said, can we go over here for a second? Now, he had never been to that cemetery before. He had no idea where I was taking him. I chose this place because it was closer to my home. And we got to this grave that had professionally etched on the grave. There was a flying saucer, a UFO. there was an alien, a gray alien, etched onto the grave, and it said, "Daddy's little ghost, Mommy's little shadow," etched into a bench. So it was this beautiful little almost park that was set up to kind of meditate, and her picture was on the grave as well. And so that opened the door. And as good documentary filmmaking goes, you have to stay open to these things. Now, this can't happen on TV because, for instance, let's say when I was shooting Strange World, we were this close to finding a huge piece of James Dean's lost vehicle, allegedly cursed vehicle. And I'm like, hey, a few more steps. We're going to find this thing. Chris, we got to move on. We got this stuff. We have to do this. We can't stick around for this. And it never really had a proper conclusion. And so doing this stuff on my own allows me to say, well, I'll take another 6 months with this. Now I finally stopped, and there's tiny little things that I'm shooting in the final editing stages, but I think it's more important. The work is more important than rushing it to get it done.
Absolutely.
You know, I'll take years with something because that's how much it means to me. And I'll put all my time and whatever money I have into it just to make it right. Because I know that the glory is this thing that people will watch long after I'm gone, and that maybe we'll say something with this, as opposed to just getting it out there to say I finished something, because I don't care about that. So there's so much in it, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it. I'm probably just rambling on at this point.
No, you're great. Well, my first question is, when is it going to be released?
So it will be finished. I set a hard deadline on myself finally, because I extended it because of 2 story parts that I wanted to make sure that I got right, and a few aesthetic things that I felt would be really neat for the film. So we're coming to a close now. It's really close. I mean, I have the timeline right here, and a lot has been edited. Almost everything's been shot for it. Now I'm writing the final narration for it, because it's, you know, getting the structure down, is getting it just right is most important to me. If I needed the extra time, I'll take it. But I think it'll be done for my hard deadline, which is the end of March. And then the next step is I'd like to have public exhibitions of it at conventions, paranormal conventions, but also film festivals. And I could put it right onto streaming if I want to through my aggregator, but I'll wait a moment and just think about what the best process is for getting this thing out that I care about so much. So you should see it. I'd like to get it a little earlier than the fall season, because it also has a Halloween aspect to it, but that doesn't matter. I think people would love it any time of the year.
Yeah.
So I think towards the summer, I think it would be, but I'll have screenings of it before then. There'll be a few that I'll say, okay, well, let's show it, you know? And I'm also thinking of showing it in the virtual world too. You know, I'm really interested in that. I think, like, for instance, in virtual reality, if you have one of those meta visors, you can go into an app called Big Screen and watch a movie in a theater. And if you have a private version of that theater, because let's say, you know, on your Big Screen app, you can set up a theater, give out a code to as many people as you want, and they can come in and sit in the theater with their helmet on. You really feel like you're at a movie theater. I watch this screening, and we can do a Q&A in there, and I think that's glorious, you know, just for people that can't get together, or we can all fly to the same place, and it's limitless as to how many people you can have at a screening. So I'm interested in that as well. Very
cool. I do have a question for you. So you mentioned, you know, the cemetery, and I follow one of the Ghost Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ghost Brothers or not. But,
they were premiering their second show around the same time Strange World came out.
Okay.
So
Dalen Spratt, I follow him, and he goes to different cemeteries of, you know, like notorious people or people who, you know, we've all heard of in some way, good or bad. And
high profile,
and he does like EVP sessions, that kind of thing, at the cemeteries. My personal belief has been that, you know, like our physical, you know, our body is there, but our soul goes elsewhere. That's just my personal belief. But he actually really gets like these EVPs and stuff from these people. It sounds like them, you know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe like the spirits, you know, can come back there, or what do you think about that?
So this is definitely something that I talk about and discuss, and I've had a lot of time to sit and think about this. So when we were at the cemetery, and this is really what solidified it for me as making another part to this film, because I had shot so much already, that when I was at the grave, Carolyn's grave, you know, there were several people with me and no one else was in the cemetery. They were by the car having a conversation. And when I'm recording at the grave and I say, and I wasn't conducting an EVP, it was completely unofficial. I just was being polite. And I said, thank you for letting me shoot here, because her picture was on the grave looking right back at me, and I'm just getting footage of the grave. It wasn't until 2 months later that I'm going through all the footage that there was a response.
Wow.
And it was a whisper, and it was a young female, and it said, I thank you. That's what we ultimately deciphered that it was saying after listening to it hundreds of times.
Right.
And I challenge any audio expert to listen to this. I'll give them the original. This was not coming from behind me. There were only 3 people behind me, and you can hear them having the conversation. It certainly wasn't Dave. He doesn't have a young female voice. And there was nobody in front of me. And this was at the lower decibel levels. So I had to pull it up. So I'm not going to show any audio expert how exactly where it came from, how I did it. I would never in a million years fake something like this. I didn't even want any EVPs in the movie. It wasn't about that. And that's what sparked me to want to contact her mother. It took a long time for us to get in touch. And thank God, finally we did. You know, she responded and we had a long conversation. And then I ended up interviewing her.
Wow.
And I heard the whole story from her, and it's a powerful interview. You'll get to see it. And when I played the EVP for her, and she immediately said, that's my daughter, you know, like, and that gives me chills, because it's, you know, I was like, look, if it doesn't sound like her, you can say so. It's okay. Like, I don't need anyone to say anything, but it was a genuine reaction on her part. And to answer your question, I've heard stories of spirits roaming cemeteries. It seems like they're wandering around. You know, we've all heard those stories. What was it? Resurrection Mary in Chicago.
Yeah.
Is an interesting one. But she's also ventured out into other places and showed up at a dance, allegedly, and all these other things. But perhaps her grave, Carolyn's grave, the girl in my picture, maybe the grave is a portal in a way, or a marker where it has an energy. So the next step in this was to get Carolyn's mother to sit there and just talk to her, because who else better to conduct an official EVP at the grave than her mom? Because I think this is, if this really was happening, if it really was her daughter trying to reach out to her, that was the whole purpose. I think, first of all, the girl was obsessed with the paranormal. She was obsessed enough to have it etched on her gravestone.
Yeah.
And this was by coincidence. This was not, none of this was planned, you know?
Right.
I had other moments in the story that were, I knew, you know, like I was going to May Stringer. I was planning on going to the other house, the Haunted Mansion at Disney, all the other places I went to. But this was by chance, you know? And
I'm like you. I don't believe in coincidence. You were made to be there. You were meant to be there, you know, for sure. And you know, maybe it was just, you know, maybe the girl's way too, of maybe helping her mother to bring closure, you know?
I felt it, you know, and Dave and Jenny felt it as well, that they, you know, she was communicating. And I think this was all about her relationship with her mother. So when you get into post-production, it's like, how do you want to portray this? Do you want to just portray this like any old ghost show and over dramatize it? Or let's say something about this. And this is about that love still exists after the physical, you know, and that there are moments that are darker, and we discuss other things, and because there's the whole spectrum. The afterlife is an entire spectrum, and I wanted to try and cover all of it in one film without it feeling too thin. And I think some books did that for me as a kid. You know, they were encyclopedic in a way. Like one of the early ones was the Golden Book of the Mysterious. It seemed to cover 100 subjects in one book, and I was obsessed with it. And I felt like it was thorough enough. You're never going to cover everything, and podcasts now exist where we can talk for hours about a subject. but a movie's got, it has to have an art to it. It also has to have information, and it has to keep moving too, you
Yeah.
know. And this is kind of like a hybrid movie and a show, because it really is a continuation of Strange World. I'm in it. I'm still hosting it. I'm still there, but my main focus is who I'm talking to, the locations, and I'm raising the same questions that I think you would want to hear as an audience member as well. So
Yeah, I really look forward to it, honestly. And then, you said you also talked about grief too. And that's something that, with a lot of like paranormal documentaries, we don't talk about.
right. Why not? You know, I think we should. I think, if anything, if my new documentary inspires other people to want to get deeper into those aspects,
Mhm.
I'm all for it. I think that's the part of the reason I'm making it,
Mhm.
is kind of elevate it a little bit and say, look, if you're going to do one of these things, let's not make the same thing that was made 1,000 times. It's just
Sure.
not necessary,
Mhm.
you know?
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
it always made me wonder though when you're talking about grief, and I don't think that most spirits hang out in, cemeteries, graveyards. I don't think they do that. But I think when our loved ones go, their grief, I believe, pulls them back, at least
Mhm.
briefly. And
Yeah, she loved her mother so much, and you'll hear the story when her mother tells the story, and there was so much sadness attached to this story too, because I think she wanted to go bowling that night, and her mother said no, but the dad kind of said, "Okay, you go ahead, don't worry about it." And her mother claims that he died of a broken heart only a year later, because he felt responsible. And it's just, I feel it just talking about it. It's sadness, and but at the same time, it brought a lot
Mhm.
of joy into uh, her life, to know that at the very least. And I tried to approach this delicately,
Mhm.
because I'm not a sensationalist in that sense. I mean, we have to exploit it in the format of a documentary. I can't help
Mhm.
it. I want to show a great story, but I'm very respectful of this situation. I didn't want to do it if she at all felt uncomfortable about it. I would have
Mhm.
just put the story away and moved forward with what I had. But I it's a beautiful story, and I think a lot of us can relate to it.
Mhm.
Uh, I part of me does not fear death at all, especially as I
Mhm.
get older, and I'm not afraid of it at all. I don't want to go anytime soon.
Right.
There's something I want to do here, but I really do believe there's so much more than,
Mhm.
and I know you do too. Uh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
and for the people that don't believe, I really
Mhm.
don't have much to tell them. I've run into people that say, "Well, I don't believe in that stuff," but like for
Mhm.
instance, I was working a bunch of different jobs years ago, and I was in this little construction crew, and I think we were demolishing a garage or something. And the foreman of the job was, we were on our break, and we're just hanging out talking, and I was obsessed with that stuff back then too. So I said, "Hey,
Mhm.
did you ever have any experiences, anything strange?" Because I would often ask people that. He said, "No." Well, wait a second. He's like, "I don't really believe in that stuff." I said, "You sure?" He's like, "Well, there was this one time." And I'm like, "Okay." And he starts telling me the story that he went to a cabin up in the Adirondacks mountains, and he was drinking. Now, I've had quite a few drinks too, and I've never hallucinated on alcohol.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I just
Yeah.
said I
No.
went outside. The guys were inside playing poker. I went outside, and there was this woman above the lake, hovering above the lake. And he's like, "I don't know what to say about it. I saw this woman hovering above the lake." Now, it was, I recalled a little bit an episode of Unsolved Mysteries where I had to go back to after that, find that episode. He was on the same lake as that episode occurred. And I don't think he was stealing it from the show. He's very
Mhm.
genuine in his inflection when he was telling me the story. In fact, he was dismissive of it because he didn't want to believe it. But
Sure.
in that particular episode of Unsolved Mysteries, there on that same lake in that area in the Adirondacks, there was a woman that just appeared to
Wow.
people, and then just disappeared into the mist. we've heard these stories since forever. Charles Dickens took parts of A Christmas Carol from an old Greek story, Thenodorus, I think. That is the Ebenezer Scrooge story. Thenodorus had moved into a mansion, and there was a Jacob Marley type situation where a ghost came to him in chains. It's written, years ago. Thousands of years ago, these stories existed. So we've been dealing with this since forever. I mean, the oldest recorded cultures have seen ghosts, So
Mhm.
this is part of our existence. But
Yeah.
what are they? And I kind of get into that as well because I've experimented with the God helmet, Michael Persinger's God helmet.
Mhm. We have a friend that has one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and probably they use it a lot. I've only used it a few times,
Mhm.
but since then I've had absolutely vivid. I mean, I always had vivid dreams, but these are intensely vivid, and I go right into REM state usually within moments of closing my eyes.
Wow.
I could just relax and I'll be in
Mhm.
and out of that twilight dream state.
Mhm.
Um, so I talk about that, and I talk about Arthur C. Clarke and all of these people that were exploring the afterlife through science as well. The ghost science, I'm calling that
Mhm.
chapter in the movie. So I wanted to cover everything, and I think if we already know the answer. We don't know the specific details of it, and perhaps we're not supposed to. That's another thing that we should be honest about, is that maybe we're not allowed to know.
Right.
Maybe we know in some other plane, and we're just
Mhm.
ruining the whole metaphysical game that we entered to learn.
Mhm.
I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel about it, but
What do you think about like life after death?
okay. So obviously, I had the same broad stroke perspective that you did when I was a kid. I mean, we learned everything through religion,
Mhm.
mythology, movies, ghost stories. I was scared of it, of course, because we're taught to be scared. I mean, I
Sure.
mentioned that about Disney. It's like, even
Mhm.
those Mickey Mouse, images of him approaching the haunted house. It's like, don't go there. It's like, well, why not?
Right.
We're supposed to fear these things. Um, but as I move forward, I think we start to realize that this is temporary, and
Mhm.
there is a reason why we're here. I don't believe we're just animals that got the stroke of luck to be more intelligent. I think animals are very intelligent. The
Mhm.
people that observe them and just see the way they are, they're wonderful creatures, and maybe more so than we are. We're a little chaotic, and
Mhm.
uh, I think that we go on for sure. I think that this is such a short period of time, and our existence beyond this is much more complicated. But if we knew all the answers here, that might spoil the lesson that we're
Sure.
learning here. So
Mhm.
that's part of how I feel, just to simplify it. But I do believe in dark and light and good and
Mm.
evil for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
I believe that there are evil influences. I think part of our lesson here is to, because a lot of that's in our traditional ways of thinking. I mean, we inherently know that
Mhm.
evil is not the way to go. There are so
Right.
many lessons to learn from it, uh, that I think to be inherently good and strong is part of your lesson here.
Mm.
And perhaps if you learn those lessons, if you feel like you've understood them and you're moving on to this next plane, I don't know, do you ever feel guided by
Mhm.
anything? You feel like guided?
Absolutely.
So
I
maybe it's part of our job to do that after this. I don't,
Mhm.
a lot of the clues are there for us. I
Yeah.
wouldn't ignore all the literature that's out there over the years. I know some of it's been messed with, but it seems to be in so much of what we've learned that the
Mhm.
messages are there, and that I I don't know. I guess can you help the sadness of losing someone? You
Right.
know, that's the one thing I think is difficult to get over. You're here with someone you care about, and then they're gone.
I
And
try to think my philosophy on it. I mean, obviously, you're sad and, but I try to think, like, when you cry and you grieve for a loved one,
Mhm.
I tell myself, okay, like, cause I lost my mom 2 years ago. And, I was telling myself, okay, you're being selfish now. You're crying for your tears. Look where she is at. She's
Right.
not crying. Thank you, Two Shadows. Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. So I feel like, I'm being greedy because I'm grieving her. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, yes, but
Better
see,
place and she doesn't care about here
okay,
anymore.
and I understand if you're alone and your release, you need that release. I think that's really important for you to have and go through.
Mhm.
But to hold on to that grief and make it your identity
Right.
is not only a detriment to you, but it's also to the people around you, because we all experience horrible loss,
Mhm.
and to be ignored for going through your grief is bad. I would say you should allow someone to go through that.
Mhm.
But if it becomes your identity,
Yeah.
I've experienced some great loss, but
Mhm.
I refuse to make it my identity, and I want to remember each of these people in a special way, and not hold on
Mhm.
so much. What is that line from Jacob's Ladder? Did you ever see Jacob's Ladder?
Been a
Oh,
while.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
So essentially, the story of Jacob's Ladder is Jacob's holding on to life. He's killed in Vietnam
Mhm.
and he's dying.
Not letting
And
go.
so there's that incredible scene where Danny Aiello is standing over Tim Robbins, and it's in this. See, that's what I think existence is like, because they say you don't know. There's ghosts that don't know they're dead.
Mhm.
So I wonder what their perspective like it is in Jacob's Ladder, where he thinks he's going to the chiropractor, and really his chiropractor is an angel, and
Mhm.
he's saying you know if you're scared of dying and you're holding on, you're going to see demons ripping your life away. But if you've made your peace, you know,
Mhm.
the demons are just angels freeing you from the earth. That's
Right.
what it tells him. And that really hit me hard when I saw
Mhm.
that scene. It's a beautiful scene. And
Yeah.
I think it's maybe one and the same, maybe, I mean, they do say God is responsible for all of it. So it's like, maybe it's one and the same. Maybe all of it is coming from this God mind that is trying to show us something.
Mhm.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so
I think honestly, I mean, obviously, I would be, to lose somebody young, but like when someone who's older passes away, they've lived their life, and it's almost, like and blessing is a wrong word. It's not such a bad thing, because I feel like, they've lived their life here. Now they're going on to do bigger, better things. It just,
sure.
yeah.
I want to feel that way, because I don't
Mhm.
want to be torn apart by grief.
Right.
It's already happened. So
Mhm.
I don't want, I choose not. And I think some people might perceive that as, well, why are you so cold about it? And it's like, I'm not.
Mhm.
There's an ocean, there's a cosmos going on in my heart and my mind.
Yeah.
I don't need to express it constantly,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a cousin who, 2 years ago, he had a stroke, and he was saved. And by one was my husband and the other was a friend, saved his life. There were several of us there when it happened. And he said that he actually saw a flight of steps, and his dad was at the steps, but his dad, when he was going into up the steps, his dad closed the door on him. And
Oh,
to this day, like, he is the most, and if you're watching, Bob, I'm sorry, but I'm just being honest. He is the most bitter person I've ever met.
yeah.
And he is ticked at the world that he wasn't able to go through that door. And I tell them, maybe you got better things here. There's a reason you're here, So,
Right.
and then you hear of near-death experiences, Brandy and I have another friend, Anna, who had a near-death experience. And hers has been, she's walking again, she's doing all kinds of good stuff, So I wonder why. You know what I mean? Some of them are good, some of them are bad. And really, I don't think my cousin's was bad. He just took it as that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. I've seen it really sour people to the point where they become extremely angry people, and they feel like
he's hateful.
it becomes hate. And I think in the inverse can happen too. Perhaps a spirit that's holding on to life too much can become a dark, angry spirit, knocking things over, poltergeist type activity. And I don't know what the future holds for the communication with the dead. I don't know if we've really gotten any closer, because if you read about all the Harry Price's stuff, they were doing this stuff a long time ago. So I wonder. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll say, maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe that kind of ruins the whole point of this. If we were, because if it was guaranteed right now to find out, oh, I'm going to tell you exactly what happens after this physical death. You get to do this, and that. It's not so bad, actually. You have no pain, and you're not going to take this too seriously anymore.
Right.
And then I think that just destroys the lesson that we're being taught. So
I don't know, Krista. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about Krista and her story about her cousin. I mean, there was more to that story, and I'm thinking that there was something else going on, something else at play, which meant it wasn't his time to go. And I don't think he understands that.
He doesn't. And I've tried to explain things to him. I've tried, and he's just he's like, quit taking all of his medication, and he just he's on a self-destruct path.
Yeah. There was a lot of weird events that weekend. I'm just saying, there was a lot of weird events. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you had that experience and you felt nothing but, let's say, bliss and love coming from the other side, and then you were sent back here for a while, wouldn't that just calm you? And it would give you great wisdom and say, look, I'm going to go eventually. I might as well make the best of it while I'm here. It's okay.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's how I feel now. It's like, I don't want to go anytime soon. There's so much I'd like to do here. We all want to.
Right.
That could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in, who knows, 100 years.
I'm 100% like you. Am I ready tomorrow? No. But, when it is my time, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be. That's, I don't want to be torn apart by grief. I just don't. So I choose not to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I said that earlier, I just feel like a lot of the grief, for me, I think it was being selfish, crying for my mom because, she's doing bigger, better things. And I fully believe,
is. Yeah. And I believe you're going to see her again.
Absolutely.
But it's okay to release that. It's okay. Sometimes it's weird. Like the other day, even I was, I'm not going to get into details as to why, but I was listening to a Metallica song, and it just reminded me of someone who's not here anymore.
Yep.
And it just hit me really hard. And you would think, well, why is this guy crying about a Metallica song? It's like,
listen to the words.
Yeah. It just, it just hit me. I didn't expect it to. I wasn't trying to. I'm not overly dramatic. I don't cry to anything really.
Sure.
But it just hit me unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So,
it's just, I appreciate everything that you're doing, with your film and things like that, because I really look forward to it coming out,
Thank you so much. Yeah, it means so much to me to make this thing across the board something worth watching again and revisiting maybe once a year, or whatever. Like that means more to me than just getting it out, and saying.
So it also sounds like we need to have Kleenex when we watch it.
I'm trying the best I can without making it melodramatic to really tap into what I'm feeling from this. and make it as genuine as possible, because there's a construction to it. I'm having these genuine feelings, and it's like I rack my brains even for the nostalgia stuff, because it's fun too, and sometimes it's humorous, and sometimes it gets a little dark, and I want it to be all those things. So but I think you'll feel it from that sequence.
Yeah. I definitely look forward to it for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. What about you had said you had went to some different haunted locations. Let's kind of shift here to anything dark. Have you come across anything on the dark side of the paranormal?
In terms of attacks, I've explored the concept of and sleep paralysis is definitely something I talk about in this. But there is, this kind of walking in limbo concept that is one of the locations, because there's a gentleman who was somewhat a hermit, and he slipped and fell, hit his head, and was bleeding profusely, and eventually died in the hallway of the house. So the new owners of the house have not only at separate times seen him, doors are shaking, and these are people I trust 100%. One of them, you'll learn who he is later, but one of them is just like the gentleman who I was working in construction for, was reluctant to even believe it's real to this moment, but is saying, well, I've had equipment fail in the house, like other equipment he uses for his job. I have heard things. I felt things touch me. I've seen a door shake in the middle of the night for reasons I can't explain. His wife is more open about what she's seen. She said she saw an apparition in the mirror. She saw the man.
Wow.
And I think so we do bring a Robin Wind, who's a trance medium, into the home. And we had a seance. Traditional seance is something I wanted to do. And what she does is, or claims to do, is that she inherits the spirit for a little while, and it speaks through her. So in the scene, you'll see her, and she claims that this is the man who expired in the house speaking through her mouth.
Wow.
Essentially possessing her for a moment, with her permission. And he speaks to us in the seance. And once again, I can't confirm 100% this is real, but I know for a fact and can guarantee you that it was not staged. We knew who we were inviting over. I knew what I wanted to do, but I allowed it to happen naturally. And whereas I've shot television before too, they're always trying to get you to repeat things. I try to just capture everything the way it should be. Now I'm setting up the scenario. I let everyone know what I am going for, but that's as much direction as anyone gets. This is what we're doing today. We're doing a seance. The rest of it is me trying to capture it and construct it in post.
Wow.
I think that is a bit of a dark tale, in my opinion, because it's a ghost who doesn't want to move on.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly pleasant to be living in a home where a spirit is appearing in the mirror, or making weird noises in your ear, or even if it's humorous to the ghost, it's kind of creepy to me. I mean, it's all the ghost stories I grew up with. Also interviewed people that claim to have been assaulted at Maystringer in the attic by a ghost they've dubbed Mr. Nasty, who was an actor. His trunk is up in the attic of the Maystringer mansion, and has hit people. The caretaker, who Bonnie Letourneau, who I've interviewed several times for this film, she's been assaulted by this ghost.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And there were suicides in the house. There's a long history that you'll learn, and these are the things in the writing that I want to get right. I'm everything from mentioning Paul Gurek for a few moments to the history of the Maystringer house to Disney. I've done extensive research for every moment, no matter how short it is. I want to make sure all the info is right. The ligaments that hold the rest of this, the larger story piece together.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I think I've heard of that building, that location.
It's been pretty
different shows.
Yeah. Maystringer, you'd love it there. You should
Yeah.
definitely visit it if you get a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming more popular. It may have been on the Dead Files, I think, for an
Okay.
episode. I
Okay.
think that was one of the shows that visited.
Yeah. Have you heard of it, Brandy?
I have not. I have not. But then again, it sounds familiar.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's got to be like on. Well, he just said it was on the Dead Files,
Yeah.
and I did watch the Dead Files.
Yeah, I think it was on an episode of the Dead Files, but my approach is a little different. I spent quite more time than any of the shows would, and my interviews are more like, for at least for those moments, I think I don't want to say humorous, but just very casual, honest responses to what's going on. Sometimes people nervously giggle about what they experienced.
Yeah.
It feels different because a lot of these shows are all kind of cut the same too. So it was always I was like, I can't do this. I won't do this. I really need to make something special, and pushing away from that format that the networks forged and said tried and true. It's like, who said that these documentaries need to be made this way? They don't.
Right.
So I did everything I could to avoid that format. And I think that the audience is going to appreciate something different.
Absolutely. A lot of these ghost shows and we have friends that film them, so I'm not knocking you if you're watching. However, a lot of them, they want their own narrative. And what I do appreciate, Brad and Barry Kling, Brandy and I are good friends with them, and they didn't follow the narrative. Hence, they don't have the show anymore because of that. But they didn't care. They didn't want anything staged or faked. And I appreciate that, what you're doing as well.
Yeah. I argued, I was the executive producer of Strange World, also the host, also directing. Yeah. And I had to argue with these people a lot. And they would, they kind of sent people in to sabotage your vision quite a bit. So, I mean, this is not against, I know what goes on. So it's like, I know that some of these people that have these shows, like the hosts and the investigators, really want it to be great. But you can't do that when the network's already decided what your show is going to be.
Right.
And your format, and they're pushing you into it and tricking you into it. And it's like, no, so look, my greatest words of encouragement is, if you're doing this on your own and you don't have a network telling you what to do, this is the very first time in TV history that you can distribute around the world. You do not need gatekeepers and middlemen anymore.
Right.
And you literally can make a fortune if you play your cards right. But it can't just be about money. Like for me, I'll spend money for 2 years straight, not making a dime, making something that has no guarantee to make a dime. And that's me, I care more about the work than just saying, oh, I have another one. Here, let's rack up the numbers. I don't care about hits and likes. I don't care about I genuinely do not care. I care about this work because the work's going to be here after I'm dead. And I wanted to, leave something behind that says something about, my experiences here that we can all relate to. I like, it's a piece of artwork too. So I care about that stuff so much, and it's not knocking anyone's ghost hunts or anything like that. I guess it's less selfish in that sense, that like I really care more about the work than I do about, I think this stuff on the internet, look, you can prove tonight in 5 minutes that a site with more subscribers isn't more important or more interesting than your site. Because there's a guy who sprays roach killer on vegetables in the supermarket, has 3 million subscribers or something, and makes $10,000 a week. Is he more interesting and more important than your work? No. So then how are hits and likes more important? That's a game played by the internet, and that takes away your reasoning for quality, in my opinion. And now you're just chasing. It's like a game. It's like a casino on the internet.
Right.
You're just chasing. Oh, now, hey, I got 40,000 likes on this, so that means I'm important. No, it doesn't. I've seen things that were incredible that barely have any subscribers at all.
Me too.
So, yeah. So just my word to anybody making something out there is just focus on the work, focus on the quality and what you want to do. Eventually it's going to kick with people. So, and it'll stick around longer too.
Yeah. And the thing too, about a lot of these ghost TV shows is, we know most of the time you're sitting in the dark and nothing's happening,
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I won't make anything. I don't need to. It's, there's enough to talk about too. Like, let's have discussions. There are incredible people to talk to out there. Like, Michael Persinger had passed away, but there are, old time ghost hunters like Barry Taff, who was part of the original UCLA parapsychology unit, headed by Thelma Moss, and Carrie Gaynor, I think, was the other person involved. And they were the people who investigated the original entity case in the early 70s that later was written in a book and as a novel, and then that novel was turned into a movie with Barbara Hershey, The Entity. Did you ever see that one?
I don't think I have seen that.
Wow. Leave the lights on tonight if you watch that. Martin Scorsese, the filmmaker, called it the scariest movie ever made. He felt The Entity was something that just scared the hell out of him. I saw that as a kid, and so
it scared me so bad.
Yeah,
really.
I
need to watch that. I got to write that down.
To see that as a child too, because of the content of it, but essentially it's about a woman named Doris Byther. Her name is Carla Moran in the movie, but in real life her name was Doris Byther, and she just came home one normal night. She had a teenage son working on a car in the garage. Her little girls, or a boy and a girl, need to be put to bed. She got home from work. I think she went in her bedroom and was just combing her hair in the mirror, maybe after a bath, and something smashed her in the face.
Oh, wow.
And then threw her on the bed.
That.
Yeah. Oh, it's something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I'll tell you what, that is a movie that has stuck with me. And they go after this scientifically towards the end of the movie. They go after it scientifically and keep it in a controlled environment and all this other kind of stuff, but it still scared me. It scared me probably as much as The Exorcist did.
Yeah, Barry Taff is still in the land of the living, and he wrote a book called Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, and it does cover some of the entity case from his perspective. But he, that dynamic was used in Poltergeist, was used in Insidious, where the Thelma Moss character, Barry Taff, Carrie Gaynor, they were just transferred to different characters in those other movies. That little parapsychology group and the female lead to the parapsychology unit was all based on reality of Thelma Moss's group that was at UCLA. And it makes me wonder why there aren't more parapsychology departments in universities. There was one, and it doesn't really occur anymore. And it's like we're being prevented from learning these things.
Right.
Further exploring them. And now you have all these independent people that are looking into it that we can now, we could do our own experiments with Michael Persinger's work. We have the God helmet. We can see what we come up with and because his whole idea was, okay, can we simulate a haunting? Can we simulate a haunting with high geomagnetic spikes? And in the location in Tampa, there is a large geomagnetic spike in that house.
Wow.
So I wonder if it's having an effect.
Sure. And you're talking about some of the OGs. We had Dave Schrader on 2 weeks ago, and he, was on the Holzer files. Talk about Hans Holzer.
Oh, wow,
That's the original. That goes way back. That before Ed and Lorraine Warren, and
Yeah, I mentioned Hans Holzer as well in this. Again, like I go back to Harry. I have some old footage of Harry Price. You could find it online, but he's going over ghost hunter devices way back.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they have no idea who those are. The original OGs. They're before Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and
Ghost Adventures is it is what it is. It's a business,
Yeah, but they're not the OGs.
No, No, and
Yeah,
anyone who believes that, come on, it's like that's ridiculous. No,
yeah, right.
it's been done for
I
so long.
I think it's more entertainment value than it is anything.
A lot of them
Uh,
are.
but Chris, do you think that people could actually manifest hauntings?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that Barry was exploring. He felt, well, all right, there was common denominator amongst a lot of these hauntings was there were kids. So it could be something in the chemistry or the hormonal changes in a child that could be inspiring a poltergeist activity. That's usually the poltergeists. Could we manifest this stuff? Yeah. Because even in conjurings and Aleister Crowley like spells, it's like, what are you manifesting? And it's been written about in H.P. Lovecraft literature, and it
Right.
was written about in Egyptian mythology. And do we have the ability to conjure something?
Yeah.
I mean, like, perhaps everything is intact. Fear could inspire something. I remember being like at my point of fear as a little kid. That's when I felt like something was in the room.
I
The
feel
monster
like,
in the closet.
yeah, I feel like honestly, like if people, you think about it enough or over and over, you can manifest just about anything. Honestly,
I think so. But we diminish or we keep the power of the mind in chains. It's almost like we're taught to dismiss it, because that's all fiction. We can't explore that. We can't find these ideas if we're open to them. I see more people than ever though open to these things. I think you have to be careful though, because if money's involved in the situation, meaning the internet seems to have a bit of a slot machine on its own. So if you come up with an elaborate story, it seems like there's a few people out there that are telling an elaborate story because they see it as an opportunity to make some quick cash on the internet if they have one. And just like you, I've come across so many people. Some people I feel are being very genuine about their experiences.
Yeah.
Others are not. I just don't feel like they are. It's about money.
Mm-hmm.
And, we all have to make money, but I wouldn't do it by making up tall tales. I think there's so many great things that we can discuss that have happened that I think we should focus on that. Let's make money doing that. At least we could share that stuff. But making things up, it's a little depressing, and I see some people doing it.
Yep. And as you said, your reputation is everything, so why fake anything? If we go to a haunted location and we get nothing, well, I'm going to tell you, we get nothing. There's absolutely nothing faked on our side.
I think we're on an interesting next chapter of our collective experiences here in this country and outside of the country too, in the world. I think we might hit an age of enlightenment, and that might raise the bar for all of us to do better work. And I love that idea. Come in with integrity, whether it be exploring the unknown or whatever you do, because I think we hit rock bottom for a little while. I don't know, not to get too political, but I feel like, let's say when you're if your parents are really messed up and they're not doing a good job, like, it's going to leave a depression over the world. And I think maybe I'm hoping, I'm very optimistic that we have a group of people coming in that might want to help for the first time, maybe help everybody, help everybody out. I don't know what you believe, but I try to remain optimistic instead of being
absolutely
down upon the situation. So if that happens, that's a really good thing for even the ghost hunting. Okay. Like, because if the bar is raised in all aspects of life, people will approach this stuff and it won't be so repetitive, and let's inspire other people to do better. I don't know. It'll be more fun.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about, let's totally switch topics for a few minutes. Sure. Let's talk about Bigfoot and Dogman. What are your beliefs about that?
So before I made a show for History Channel called The Dark Files, I was shooting a documentary in northern Michigan, in Colorado, and in Utah, and I always wanted to make the ultimate Bigfoot documentary. This is before, let's see, I've always wanted to do it, even before I shot Montauk Chronicles, but I waited, and then I started shooting it when I moved to Michigan, and it was coming out really good. Now, since then, there's been about 1 million Bigfoot documentaries, but I had one experience. I didn't see anything. I went out with a guy named Joe Stewart in northern Michigan. It was just about the winding end of deer season. Had an interesting ghost experience while I was out there. Stayed in a place in Mayo, Michigan called Millie's Cabin, built in the 30s, and heard a little girl crying in the middle of the night,
Wow.
Yeah. Like it was strange. I loved the cabin though. It was awesome. But went out in the woods in a place with called the Field of Screams with Joe, and I've documented all of this. And he had a didgeridoo, wooden instrument. And he said, look, we got to wait. Now, any deer hunters that were out there had already left. There was nobody out there and not a soul. It was cold. I think the first thing I heard was the coyotes leaving the den, and that was wild and amazing to listen to. And then it got dark, and we were out there for a while, and he blew into that thing. And then sounded like a scream. And I said, well, what do you think that is? He's like, what do you think it is? I'm like, I don't know. You're the expert. And he said, well, I think it's one of them. And then what ended up happening was we started hearing a crunching. Now, Joe, we knew we were going there, but I'm pretty sharp with this stuff. There was nobody waiting out in the woods in the middle of nowhere for this particular situation, because the timing would have been off. We didn't know exactly we were going to go exactly at that spot. And so we were hearing this crunching coming over, and something was in the woods, and it sounded like something big. And then I heard an owl sound come from one area and another one. So it was like two owls communicating. Now, I've heard owls before, but this didn't sound, it sounded like something was making an owl sound. I've told this story before. I told this story years ago. I think I was even on Coast to Coast, and I was talking about it while I was making it. So this was 2016 or something. And that was my experience with what Joe suggested was an actual Bigfoot in the woods, making that sound, because it sounded odd, and it didn't sound like it was coming from a man. Do I believe in it? So I was at a zoo not that long ago, and I was looking at orangutans and just blown away by them. And it's like, do you just look at primates, the ones that exist? There's a woman in A Haunting We Will Go, completely different subject, really quick. She, in the early 70s, somebody was bulldozing 1,500-year-old Native American burial mounds into the water because they were developing land and they didn't care. So she rescued a skull. She had the skull in her possession. This is all documented for A Haunting We Will Go. And, there's this kind of interesting spiritual relationship between her and the skull, and she finally wants to have it reinterred. But she's friends with Jane Goodall, and we were talking about this subject about Bigfoot. And Jane Goodall believes 100% that Bigfoot exists, that the idea of that and different species around the world. We've heard reports about these things around the world. If you look at an orangutan and you believe that exists with your own eyes, or the mountain gorilla or anything like that, why is it so far-fetched to believe that there's this kind of larger hominid, walking around in different parts of the world, maybe conscious enough to keep their breeding population down? We've heard about these things throughout history. And I do have a Bigfoot project that I've been developing for a very long time. At one point, Animal Planet was interested in talking. I'm glad I never made it with them. I want to do this on my own because it's the only way it's going to be made the way I want. And I promise you've never seen anything like this before.
Wow.
Yeah. No one is doing it. And I'm shocked. I told Dave Spinks a little bit about it, but I try to keep tight, locked lips about it, because the ideas are like gold. Because a lot of people don't have any ideas. I can tell. But I promise this is something I'm gonna make. Always wanted to make. I want to blow you away with it. it really does discuss stories here and there throughout history, but it
Mhm.
also talks about now.
Mhm.
And if anything, and I've told other people this. Look, if you I personally wouldn't want to find it because it doesn't want to be found. The species, different species, right? If they
Right.
exist, they don't want to be found.
Mhm.
They're trying to get the hell away from us. I think they've seen, the worst parts of us. They've seen industry, they've seen pollution, they've seen war, and they retreated to a place where they knew they would never fit in with us, and they want nothing to do with us. So I wouldn't chase them down, because what's going to happen is, if you call out their location, if you end up actually finding where they might be settling, if they're not nomadic, um, what's going to happen next is there's going to be some boys that show up with high-powered rifles and kill them,
Yep.
and I wouldn't want to be responsible for
No.
that.
No.
And I don't know. I I just don't find it so far-fetched to believe. Now, if someone's saying, "Well, how do you believe in werewolves?" Well, okay, let's go through folklore for a second. There's people that
Mhm.
believe in them throughout history in different places. There's ideas of shape-shifting and different cultures, and I have an open mind. It doesn't mean I'm going to believe in every story that's told to me, though, because
Right.
again, I also believe in people who are trying to make a few bucks off of a tall tale. And that
Mhm.
also has existed since the dawn of time,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So, um, but I think it's quite possible, especially if we look at what we do have specimens of in
Mhm.
reality, and things we doubted their existence of, and then we find one alive. I don't know. It's all exciting, though. It always has been for me.
Yeah.
Um, if someone really wanted to find one, I think they could. I think they're going about it all wrong. I think I think it's wonderful to go through the woods. I've done it too, to have these conversations, have campouts, talk to people that have had experiences. That I love all of that.
Yeah.
But an actual hunt, I think, would require some, ex-military trackers, people like that. Very, very small group, far away from larger groups, obviously washing their scent off, and out in the wilderness for months, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe, they'll find some evidence of it, like some
Mhm.
solid evidence. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have some pretty valid points. I was that one person who, and Brandy was too. We were 100% flesh and blood, like these creatures. They bleed like us. They do this. They do that. Until we've had some weird things happen out in the woods that just can't be explained. So we've kind of, come to the idea that between the paranormal and Bigfoot and all that, they're intertwined in our belief.
Sure, and I'm open to that too. We live in a mythical world.
Mhm.
There's strange things have happened since the dawn of any kind of recorded occurrence. I mean, even cave
Yeah.
paintings. There's I wonder if we're going to learn more just up ahead.
Mhm. It's crazy because, if you would have told me 10 years ago, in 10 years from now, you're going to believe in fairies, I'd have laughed you away.
I mean, someone very close to me says she saw something, come out of the wall when she was a kid and stand on a
Mhm.
shelf. Now, I heard other people say the same thing, and then people have dubbed
Yeah.
it the Harlequin. So, credible people
Right.
that I don't know and people that I believe
Mhm.
have seen things.
Yeah.
I, um, well, I was under great duress. I saw an apparition. So I don't know if it's because I was just a mess, because it was the same day I found that person dead.
Oh.
Uh, but I did see an apparition that I didn't know of in Michigan, in my apartment in Michigan, walk from one room to another and disappear. And then the only other time was I heard, very profoundly heard, a whispering when I was 14, a ghost.
Oh.
And I So my mind is open, of course, because if I had those experiences, then how could there not be some other dimensional existence? And perhaps we're seeing things from those other dimensions. I'm very open to that.
Mhm.
I think you just have to be cautious as to who's trying to jump in on a bandwagon to make a few bucks, because then
Right.
what ends up happening is it extracts the credibility of someone who might really be telling the truth. And
Agreed.
yeah, just to be careful with that. I mean,
Mhm.
Hmm.
I hear these stories a lot, and I'm open to exploring them, but
Mhm.
I know that, again, if there's a dollar sign availability, it's
Yep.
going to draw people out to make stuff up, and that sucks because I love hearing like the good stories. I love hearing honest story
Correct.
experiences from people.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Definitely appreciate you come on because, like your thought process is real similar to Brandy and I.
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate it. I love having these
Mhm.
conversations too.
Yeah, and I definitely look forward to when your film comes out for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm really interested in the Disney point that you were making. Um, they've even made video games. It's called Kingdom Hearts or Kingdom Hearts, something like that. Anyway, but it is about the Disney characters, and they're in these castles and lands and stuff, and they're fighting these black shadow things. And I'm just like, wow,
yeah. Walt
it's
Disney
creepy.
was obsessed with all of the above, all the supernatural, hauntings. There were haunted houses and so many, and I kind of show that in the film, that whole lineage and all leading up to this place where you know hundreds of thousands of people a month are going through these haunted mansions around the world. There's one in Tokyo, France,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Los Angeles, Orlando. Um, you know, it's amazing. And we all have that shared experience, and how someone's imagination could, become ours too. I mean, Stephen
Yeah,
King's a great
Yes.
example of that.
yeah.
Yes.
Stephen King's written stories that have become
Mhm.
our modern
Absolutely.
mythology.
You mentioned Walt Disney with the haunted. So Walt Disney is actually from Marceline, Missouri, and Brandy and I are both in Missouri, and it's a home of his birthplace. And they say that his birthplace home is haunted.
Yeah, 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 and he later too, and he went to England looking for haunted castles, and I mean, there's so much to that man.
Yeah,
Uh,
road
It
trip,
makes you
Brandy.
I know. I know. It makes you wonder if that's where it all stemmed from, is his childhood home, and if he had seen something or, something like that, and it just all spawned from there, his curiosity for it. But I've been to every Disney there is except for Tokyo. I never made it to Tokyo yet. It's on my to-do list.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of people say that these parks are haunted.
I
There are
you know
stories.
Sure. What creates a haunting? Even recently, and this has happened quite a bit, somebody was arrested because they were spreading their loved one's ashes in the haunted mansion.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like, why would you do that? I have no
Because it was
idea.
their favorite place. It was, and they probably said, I want, when I die, I want you to put my ashes in the haunted mansion. And it was innocent, but
Mhm.
they obviously got vacuumed up.
Right, right. And it makes you wonder why the evil villains that came about in the stories from Disney are evil. I mean, straight
Mhm.
up evil.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
sure.
like, oh,
Just as 86 in chat says, yeah, the Disney stuff always had a dark underlining, even the films. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
The,
isn't he like frozen or something
I
somewhere?
think that's what I heard. Yeah, he was cryogenically frozen, but I don't know
Yeah,
how true that is. I mean, maybe it is.
maybe.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out one day.
He'll come back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was quite a man.
Do you
Yes,
think
he
that
was.
genuinely any celebrity that we know of could have faked their own death? I think Michael Jackson could have.
Hmm.
I believe that. I also believe Elvis could have if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. They both had enough money to do it and get away with it.
Yeah,
Sure.
they could have both disappeared easily.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't they? Look at the spotlight they were in. They couldn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, they were better off disappearing than living that life. and
Yeah.
what they were
Exactly.
being
Yeah.
turned
Exactly.
So if they did do that, do you think that like their children and their loved ones know the truth, or do you think?
I wonder how you would get away with. You'd really have to trust the people you tell. You'd have to trust them. They'd really have to be part of it and agree with you that that's okay to do, and they'll never tell a soul. I mean, that's a rough one. People
Yeah.
can't keep secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some people
well,
are
I mean,
yeah.
I was going to say, you got to think about Elvis, that
Yeah.
there wasn't very many people close to him at the time of his death that he considered close. I mean,
Mhm.
most of his family was gone. All he had left was his daughter and his ex-wife, I guess, or
Mhm.
ex-wives, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
but
Hitler.
could he have just told his daughter? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. Tupac and Hitler and Two Shadows says Jim Morrison. Yeah.
That's what they say. Yeah, there was a guy that claimed to be Morrison out on a farm, and where was it, Nebraska or something. And that great movie, Eddie and the Cruisers. Did you ever see that?
Yes.
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 Yeah, I watched a lot of horror films and ghost stories when I was a kid, but at the very end of that movie, where you see his reflection in the TV screen, and then the movie ends because it reveals that he's alive, but he has a beard and everything. It was so creepy to me. That was like a ghost story, parts of it at least.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. Interesting stuff. I'm now you really got me thinking about a lot of these people. Somebody I can't in chat had said about Elvis. BJ says Elvis is supposed to be living in the upstairs of Graceland. That's why no one is allowed to go up there on tours.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That might be a good full show topic to do. Is it possible?
Yeah.
Memphis
Yeah.
isn't too far from Brandy. We need to make a road trip. Seriously, Brandy.
No, yeah, it's close. It's close. I just don't think that they allow people upstairs due to the fact that that's where he did pass away at, is in the upstairs of his mansion.
Mhm.
And it's just the whole dark side of that story, and I think they just keep it closed down. I mean, there was a family member living there at one
I think
point.
there was
Now,
an aunt.
yeah, and now that they have passed, that there's nobody living there, I don't
Interesting.
know.
Has any ghost hunter ever entered those gates?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
But you know
No,
what? Seriously,
not-
that should be on our bucket list next year, Brandy. Let's make a trip to Graceland and
What's
take
the,
equipment with us. We'll do the tour.
What's the
Nobody
ghost hunting holy grail that nobody can get inside, or at least one of them?
Graceland.
Is it Graceland?
That would be great. Or
Yeah,
Michael
that was-
Jackson's place too, Neverland.
Neverland Ranch. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a cool place to get into.
That's interesting.
I seen. I was talked earlier about Dalen Spratt. Going to like cemeteries and these places where these people are buried. He went to Michael Jackson's and actually talked to Michael Jackson about Neverland and things like that. That was an interesting episode.
Wow, I'd have to check that out.
Yeah. Dalen Spratt. I think that's all it is on YouTube, and he goes to all kinds of places. Like he did. Who was the? Oh gosh, just a lot of them. Who was the guy, the football player that killed his wife?
Oh boy,
O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson, yeah.
So he went and talked to Nicole or whatever, his ex-wife, and just
Right.
he just really does some really interesting places.
Oh, we got another one. Morgan in the chat says Buckingham Palace.
Oh
That
wow,
would be a
okay.
cool
That's
place.
Oh,
another
if those walls could talk, that would
Sure,
be
of
something.
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely. So anyway,
Or
real quick,
lingering spirits. Lingering spirits would be okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that has such a history, such a deep history. What about the pyramids in Egypt? Great pyramids.
oh, that would be another good one. Yeah.
Yeah, because that would answer a whole lot of questions that people have.
Mhm.
If you could just get some type of spirit to interact and connect with you. I mean, because we could
Mhm.
finally figure out how they built the pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully soon we'll start to realize that history wasn't written correctly in some parts.
Right. Absolutely. I want to thank Two Shadows. Thank you very much. And Josh Casto, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. I'd like to get you back on again.
Oh yeah,
sometime.
anytime. And I'd love to have you come to, the Q&A at some of these screenings too. It'd be great.
Oh, absolutely. That would be fun. I would enjoy that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on, though. I really appreciate it, and we're fans of yours, and I look forward to your films that come out. Definitely keep us posted.
I will. Thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you everybody in chat. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Amy.
Definitely appreciate that. And tomorrow night, what are we talking about, Brandy?
We are talking about New Year's Eve myths and mysteries.
Yes. So that should be kind of fun. Anyway, we'll keep it light and all that good stuff. So anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. And until tomorrow night, we will see you then. After the show, tune into Our Paranormal World, Monica Rawlins. She'll be coming on, I think, her and Joe Breezy. So tune in over there.
10 p.m.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
You.